Where am I? There I am.
Well, hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm better now that I've finally got hot water. I was without it for 3 weeks.
Oh gosh, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's hard to find a plumber that knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Finally, the lowest bid turned out to know what he was doing.
Good. That was lucky.
Thank God for people that are willing to share their good fortune with me.
Yep. Well, we're way early, so.
Yeah, video just went out.
Yeah, I just shut my video off.
Oh,
It's still on. It's just off right now. See, my cat is hogging up my chair.
well, I'm worried about my dog. The last few Zoom meetings I had to do it on my phone because he insisted, well, it was during what he thinks is his cuddle lap time. So I had to sit in his particular chair with him on my lap, trying to hold the phone. Otherwise, he would bark at me for hours.
Yeah, my blind dog has to be next to me constantly. It's quite irritating.
Well, I don't mind it so much. It's just that this is brand new behavior.
Yeah. I just can't stand him on me constantly. It's too much.
Oh, yeah.
But he's going to probably be put to sleep pretty soon.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, he's 13. He's blind from a genetic disease that causes glaucoma. So he's in a lot of pain from that. And he's pretty much deaf. So.
I'm beginning to wonder about mine. He's still acting kind of like a puppy, but that's also new behavior. And he's about 13 now.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's about the age that you have to put him down. I mean, the oldest dog I've ever had was 17.
Oh, that's a pretty good long time. Must have been a small one.
No, he was a pit bull.
Oh, really?
And he was a he was a rescue pit bull. He'd actually been fought in the pit.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd had fights. He had a chunk missing out of his tongue. And one of his tendons on his front paw was cut because his toenail just stuck up. But he was a really good dog.
Well, he must have been very grateful for a different kind of a life to live that long.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't believe it.
Usually it's small dogs that live a long time if they are mutts.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only had mutts. I've never had a purebred dog. I'll be right back.
Hello.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. How are you holding up?
Okay, now that I have hot water,
Oh,
I was without it for 3 weeks, trying to find a plumber that knew what he was doing and wasn't going to charge me 10 times what the job was worth.
what did you do in the meantime?
I heated water on the stove and took Japanese style baths without the bath part.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm glad you have it now, but I'm sorry to hear you went through that.
Yeah, the worst part was trying to find a plumber. I could not believe some of the things I was told. They wouldn't even come out. They just say, flat rate, $8,200. And I said, no way in hell.
What was wrong with was it just replacing the hot water heater?
Yeah,
That's not that expensive.
it is anymore. They wanted $2,500 to replace the tank and $8,200 to do a tankless. And I got it done for a little over $3,000 a tankless. It's planned obsolescence now. They won't last more than 5 years, 6 years at the max. And you have, it was 6 years ago, it was out of warranty by 2 months when it just fell completely apart. And no warning, nothing.
Yeah, I remember with my last house, I remember when I heard this funny sound in the basement and I opened up the door and the water heater was spraying water everywhere and it flooded the basement. I'll never forget that.
Well, I didn't get a flood. It turned itself off.
Oh, that's good.
But it's just unreasonable. I paid $300 labor and tank 6 years ago. And now it's $2,500. And they can't guarantee it more than 6 years. So I went to a tankless, but it was still hard to find somebody that knew what he was doing. Fortunately, the lowest bid did 3 times the amount of the work.
Wow.
And did it right. Ended up getting it.
Hello, Maureen.
Hello, how are you, Julie?
Good.
Hi, Dave.
Mr. Lewis.
Hi.
Hey.
Do you like the theme of my backdrop?
I do.
I picked that specially for today.
Thank you. I'm at home today. My son wants to say hi.
Hi.
What's your name? What's your name?
Zion,
John?
Z-I-O-N.
Oh,
Hi.
Zion.
Very nice. I'm Julie. Nice to meet
Nice
To
you.
meet you.
These are some of my work friends.
Mhm.
I work with your dad.
They are.
Is he as nice at home as he is at work?
Am I nice at home?
Yeah.
Say good night and go take your shower, please.
How old are you, Zion?
Work.
Um,
8.5. Nice. 3rd grade? All right.
9 and 19 weeks.
Not that we're counting.
No.
Yeah, you'll stop doing that soon.
So when were you born, in June?
April 28th.
April. Got it. Got it. I did quick math in my head. I did it too soon. So nice to meet you. Our meeting may
Yeah.
not be very interesting. So you probably got to go get ready for bed.
You do.
This is Zoom.
It is.
Yeah.
Will you please go take your shower and get ready for bed?
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. What a nice young man.
We have an attendee, but I don't know. Let me see. Oh, it's Rita came in as an attendee. I don't know why.
Probably couldn't find your email. Monica will not be joining us. She had a procedure done today.
So hopefully we have 2 more joining. Or we just need 1 more.
The board's a 7-member board. You need 4 for a quorum.
Is somebody
Yeah.
else on?
Yep, we have Cara. Hi, Cara.
Oh, I don't see her. She's not showing up on my screen.
You aren't showing up either,
I'm not showing up?
Your
No.
name is,
but not your video.
Oh, the video went off. Ah, how's that?
perfect. Cara, do you like my backdrop? I put a tree up there. I did it
do. That looks awesome.
Right?
I still don't know how to do that.
Really?
Video settings. Is it
Yeah.
an ash tree, Julie?
No, it is not. I believe it's a maple tree. I deliberately did not do an ash tree. I wanted to do a healthy, thriving tree.
Okay, you have a quorum, Julie.
I sure do. We sure do. Let's go ahead and get started then. So I'm welcoming everybody to this regular meeting of the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee on December 16th, 2020 to order. So let's go ahead and do a roll call. I'll call your name and just please raise your hand. This is Chair Julie Bowden. Cara? Thank you. Carson? Thank you. Member Dickerson? Member Sonia? There we are. Hi, Sonia. All right.
Sorry, my
Welcome,
computer
everyone.
was seizing. My laptop wasn't opening up.
Okay. So I think I told everybody else Monica will not be joining us tonight. She had a procedure done today.
You want to call on Rita?
Pardon me?
Councilmember
Oh,
Russell?
yes, thank you. Councilmember Russell, I don't see her.
I showed her as being oh, okay, she's come back off being a attendee, so maybe she's going to come back on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll give her a minute. They had a really long meeting the other night. I stayed on as long as I could. Sonia, I visited your store the other day.
Oh, you did. I
Well,
didn't know
your
that.
husband's store.
Okay. I'm sorry about the tent over the summer.
Oh.
Monica told me about the tent and I was like, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Oh, no, they ran so fast and, because there was probably 4 cars and we were all going east. And it happened right before, it was probably a block away. And by the time I passed them, they had control of the tent by then. So
Oh, that's good.
they responded very quickly.
Good. That was a crazy day.
Yeah, the wind was crazy. Well, what is your husband's first name?
Michael.
Michael, okay. I couldn't remember, and I don't think he was there.
No, today's his day off. Tuesday, Wednesdays.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Retail, you have to be there over the weekend and
yeah.
and the 2 owners take turns. So there's always an owner there, which is nice.
I'll give Rita 1 more minute and then we can go ahead. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. The second item on our agenda is consideration of minutes from our previous meeting in November. Would someone please move to approve? Thank you, Sonia. Do we have a second? Thank you, Colleen. Are there any corrections or discussions? Colleen?
Yeah, last meeting, Chair Bowden agreed to start over using the existing code and to put the suggestions for the revisions discussed by the committee previously as part of the package to review. And I just wanted to see that put in.
Okay. Did you find the document on the G drive or on the shared?
I don't know. I just wanted to
Okay.
amend to reflect that we
Okay.
were starting over and that you were putting the revisions that we had discussed to the code
Okay.
on the drive for us
And
to
we
read.
wanted a clean copy. Okay, Maureen?
Yeah.
Where exactly is that on the minutes?
It's not on the minute. She was asking to put it in.
Put it on the
And where
minutes.
am I going to put it in the minutes at? What item were we discussing?
Tree and shrub code,
Pardon me?
Yeah,
The tree code? Okay.
the
Yeah.
tree and shrub code.
And you want me to add that the chairperson stated that you'd go back to the beginning?
So the request was to post existing tree code without all the comments and changes from earlier this year on the Google Drive. And that it has been posted up there. And then the other version, it has all the comments from the committee back in January and also from the city attorney. So we wanted a clean version. Colleen?
Yeah, and the revisions that we had discussed. And I sent them to you the day after.
Right, right.
You were going to put that on there too.
I will upload those.
On the minutes or on the Google Drive?
I'll upload it to the Google Drive.
Okay. So does the person that made the motion approve of the amendment? Which would be you, Member Strom.
Yes.
Does the seconder approve of the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, then you guys can vote.
Were there any other discussions or conversations about the minutes? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please raise your hand. And I see unanimous. Thank you so much. The minutes as amended are accepted. The next item on the agenda is the public forum. Do we have a public forum attendee, Maureen, other than Rita?
And Rita left, so she's not even on there.
Oh, she
We do
said,
not.
Rita said she cannot find the link even though she searched her inbox.
Okay, I can send it to her again.
Got it, okay. But we don't have any public forum members, that's right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll go ahead with the next item on the agenda, code enforcement significant events. Supervisor Lewis?
Hi. Let me get my glasses back on. Sorry about that. Did everybody have an opportunity to review the statistics that were sent out? If not, just a few highlights again to point out is we're continuing to see an increase in our trash and litter non-compliant. And again, we're really working with businesses as well as private residences that are having problems in making that work. Outdoor storage continues to be another issue, and this goes hand in hand again with those people that are staying home. More often, we are seeing people are really doing spring cleaning, but they're really not knowing what to do with some of their outdoor storage items. This particular being like old furniture, such as sofas, indoor furniture that might be used, that may be outside, bookshelves. We've also seen other mattresses and other items that have accumulated outside of someone's property.
Okay.
And then again, animal welfare and animal control, we continue to see an increase in that. Calls for service as well as proactive enforcement opportunities. And I'll have a more detailed breakdown. I have not received a date yet from the city manager as to when we would present an update to city council as well as you all. So, but Sean is aware that that has been a request made by this group, and Sean Lewis will be putting it on a future study session. I know with the holidays and everything being so packed that it's complicated. Just a few updates as we're going through this status. The other day on Monday, we did issue 172 snow notices between the group. out to the community. And we're really finding that most of the people that we were in contact with, we typically would put the notice on the door and knock or ring the doorbell, are usually home and do have snow supplies. I think some of them just needed some reminding and some gentle education as to our snow ordinances. Code enforcement as well as other officials met with Tri-County Health on Monday. I really want to impress on you or let you know, because it does affect code enforcement. The Code Enforcement Division has been tasked under the governor as well as other department officials to assist with coronavirus enforcement. The city is taking the approach of education. Tri-County Health does support that option where we are educating businesses and those people who are non-compliant. We're not finding the complaints are so much, we're enforcing the business component, which really is an enforcement. I say that lightly. We are doing education. We are at a 98% compliance rate with our last audit. So I'm very proud of the city of Inglewood on our citizens and our businesses and complying with those orders. I'll continue to be the liaison to file any non-compliant businesses that continue to not comply with certain health regulations orders. And I see that Rita has joined us. Rita, I just want to let you know that I'm talking briefly outside of the statistics, but that we issued 172 snow notices on Monday. And that I was discussing that we had a meeting with Tri-County Health, several officials within the city. Tri-County Health is very supportive of the city and our educational opportunities that we are given whenever we do receive masking complaints or business non-compliance complaints. Tri-County Health is going to continue to support our education efforts. They're very impressed that we do have a third-party security person who has been hired with our CARES Act that is also assisting with the downtown business district and other districts to do the educational component. Currently, we only have one business that is continuing to be non-compliant, and the health department is taking next steps against that particular business. But like I said, and Rita's aware of this from her updates, during the most recent Tri-County Health update, 98% of our businesses and those visiting the businesses are in compliance with health orders related to face covering. I'm really proud that our education and our outreach is really working within the business community. Monday, if you have not had an opportunity to review Monday's off-leash presentation, I think it's very important that this particular body is aware of what is occurring, because this specifically impacts code enforcement, to the point that I would highly recommend that all of you at one point review this and maybe have a conversation, and as a body decide how you wish to support these changes. Because the biggest component to this is a group of a variety of community members, as well as a professional mediator, city staff, and other stakeholders came together over multiple weeks to have conversations about the status of our parks and how do we make them healthy and safe moving forward. And a consensus was made drawing up some boundaries with specific fenced dog parks, which basically clarifies the role of code enforcement and our enforceability. I think part of the concern that the community has had, city council, as well as code enforcement, is the way that it was posted or the designated areas, certain parks, certain times, was very confusing, and it did cause a lot of conflict between code and the community, but it also it has a lot of conflict between the users within the park. So I think this is going to help eliminate a lot of the conflicts that we've currently had within our parks. I encourage you to review that, maybe take it up under business, have a future conversation. It will, I foresee, have a significant reduction in the conflicts that we have in our parks, and allows code enforcement and police to adequately enforce off-leash regulations and privileges within our city parks. It expands areas within our parks that are going to be used. It also expands the hours. So those off-leash areas will now be from the time the park opens to the time the park closes. So it really is a great compromise. Multiple different areas are giving up different, or or compromising in different aspects, whether it's youth sports is giving up a particular field for off-leash. Off-leash area might be reduced in one area, but expanded in another. And I think moving forward, this, based on my professional opinion and the opinion of the code enforcement officers, this is a way to move forward and really put Inglewood on the map as the premier animal welfare city, offering additional amenities to those pet owners within the Front Range. None of our communities surrounding Inglewood will have such a robust amenity program for our pets and pet owners. So I'm quite proud of the work that committee has done. I know Monica's not here. She was the representative of this committee, and she had hoped to present that, I'm sure, tonight. So I'm just stepping in to provide that update to you.
Supervisor Lewis, were there any code implications in the recommendation?
The only code the only code thing that would impact this, and this is something we've already discussed, it is a recommendation of the off-leash task force or the subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation in the community, is that we explore licensing. That is one option that has been brought forward, as well as this body has also brought that forward. And then I wanted to let you know, but Monica beat me to it in sending out the communication to everybody. It has been reviewed and will be published. I'm very proud of the work that this body has done, and the communication subcommittee and all of you on your ideas. I'm very pleased with the way the article is coming out. It shows how code enforcement is really needed, and it's a positive thing in our community. It's not a negative. We're really trying to work with our community. And it's re-emphasizing also the snow ordinances. And again, we did run into 172 businesses in the last week, or 172 opportunities with residences that were not in compliance with our snow ordinance. So with that and that long breath and talking fast, do you have any questions for me?
Going back to the off-leash recommendation, what were the next steps? I recall that they're doing some research before moving.
I am not a mathematician, so explaining this analytical aspect does not suit me well, but if you watch the video, the next steps will be to send surveys. There's 5,000 randomly selected confirmed addresses, or people who have also worked within past surveys that have been verified, that are being surveyed, and I don't have those survey questions available. The survey will be done, that information will be presented to council, and ultimately council will have the say in it and how we move forward, what changes might be recommended, what they like, what they don't like. There are some concerns, I'm just going to be very honest with you, about Jason Park on a variety of sides, from sports users, from off-leash users, but it is the compromise that meets the maximum amount of usage possible for that park. Not everyone's going to be happy. But I think in the long run, people will come to.
I think Council Member Russell said it really well. I think that this equally made everybody mad. Everyone's going to be equally mad.
It is true, and I use the word bitter pill to swallow. I think between the different organizations, code enforcement and council, people are very passionate about this topic. Even members in this own body are very passionate about this topic. And I really want to impart on all of you to review this and to have an opportunity to have a say, because it does significantly impact the way code enforcement will operate. And I think it would be in the positive aspect, along with the compromises and consensus that we came up with. Again, not everyone's going to be happy, but I think as a community, if we are alienating or not allowing the most people to utilize our facilities, then we may be doing something wrong. So I would just impart on all of you to be informed and educated and understand all aspects and all sides of this topic. And it's very extensive. Some of you have followed it in various forms over the last, I don't know, Rita, several years, but really over the last year, it's really come to fruition with the recommendations of Park and Rec. So yes, good
And
question.
in what way does it significantly impact code enforcement operations?
So the concerns that we have is the way that we're doing the enforcement. It's very confrontational. People are not understanding when they can use the park, what parts of the park they're having. We're running into conflicts between non-pet owners and sports, where people believe that they have the priority to use the facilities when in reality it's more complicated than just this is off leash area, but Parks Youth Sports has rented it, so you have to leave. It's going to allow a more clarified approach to where and when animals will be congregating off leash. But the parks are always open to those animals that are on leash. It's just these particular areas will be designated as off leash, and based off of informal evaluations of a couple of our parks, majority of people, because we do have those amenities, we offer these amenities to the community. And when I say community, it's not just Inglewood. We do have a lot of people, a considerable amount of people that live in Denver, Littleton, and Sheridan that come specifically to use our facilities because we do offer pet-friendly amenities.
Thank you. Carson?
I've got several questions. First, when like on the trash and litter, like, can you give like a perspective on what types of things is it like new types of issues, newly enforced issues? What predominantly are you seeing with the increase in trash and litter problems?
So, one moment. So when you see a new number, that means a new case has been generated. So when we talk about trash and litter, it's specifically about the accumulation of trash at someone's property. The removal of trash, those people that may not have weekly trash service. Those are
That's the most common thing is people who don't have trash service.
Don't have trash service, or they have an excess accumulation, or they may not be. We may have people who have put a bunch of trash in their backyard hoping, or their back alley hoping that the trash company will pick it up by Wednesday and it's not covered. Their animals are spreading it around. So those are the types of things that we look at.
Okay, thank you. And then my next one's on, so animal control, you mentioned it's a mix of proactive and calls. Do you have any perspective on like what percent is the proactive versus call-ins reported?
So I can't provide that specific number to you. That's going to be something that we will work on hopefully together before we present to council with our update. That is a very tedious task to take on. If I was to guess, I shouldn't guess because I look at all the animal control bite reports. I can say for sure that it's over 60% is proactive enforcement. So within our park facilities.
That's at the parks that mostly like related to off leash, or
yeah, it could be off leash. It could be not picking up after your animal. About 40% of our animal control calls currently are occurring within our park.
Okay, thank you. And then I wondered on the snow, what source are you guys using as the reference point for the end of snow?
That is a great question, and that is one that we went around about in the city, and this is going to sound very strange, but the way that certain laws are written around this topic throughout the state and throughout the country is you have to go to the nearest airport, because most airports are the ones that are measuring the distinct snowfall. So our closest airport would be Centennial. I know it's a little bit night and day, but that is what specifically is in that ordinance, is the Centennial Airport.
Okay, so there's do you go to like the airport website to get that, or what?
So you can go to the NOAA's website and do a search by airport or geographical location.
Okay, thank you. And then on COVID rules, what does education mean? What is the primary like type of education that you guys end up doing?
So for example, I'll give you one example of what's typical is we may go to a business, we may call them and ask maybe a manager to step outside. We may speak to them on the phone. We just let them know that we have received a concerned citizen complaint. We just want to make sure that they're educated on the topic. We make sure that they have the adequate postings that are required. All public places do have to have a conspicuous posting. And again, almost all majority of our facilities are within compliance. So we also have flyers and leaflets that we email. We prefer to not hand out information just to limit those touch points between people. Just like we're not, when we issue violations, we're no longer having them sign. We can put in person and give it to them directly to minimize the use of pens and touching. So that's really the opportunity that we have. We do, the Tri-County Health Department does receive all of these violations. They also send them additional resources should we receive more than one non-compliant complaint from the community. But
So
I will
that's-
tell you, I apologize. What I meant to say was most of our businesses are compliant. The concern that we're having is with patrons who are visiting these facilities and they're being asked to come into compliance. And we're seeing this more at our grocery stores and other facilities where they become more combatant and hostile, and then the police get involved because they're refusing to comply or refusing to leave. So that's kind of where the majority of the police calls for service is usually customers or patrons not complying with the requests by staff, owners or managers of restaurants or facilities.
And is it almost always just related to masking, or is it also physically distancing?
We do receive a few complaints about physical distancing, but that's kind of an odd one. We talked about it briefly. Everyone has a different perspective of social distancing, and people don't always measure very well by eye. We're really not hearing that. We are hearing that from a few of our bars who have come into compliance, or alcohol establishments, and they've all done very well in trying to, most of them have done very well in trying to accommodate that when we did receive those complaints.
Is there any aspect of proactive enforcement on this, or is it pretty much all just based on called in reports?
So the third party person that is hired utilizing the CARES Act money is doing proactive enforcement. So they are down in the downtown area on foot, in a vehicle as well, observing and reporting concerns that they have.
Thank you. What exactly is the video that you're recommending we watch to start with in regard to the off-leash discussions?
I would need to do some research. There's quite a few over the last year through the Parks and Rec Commission, as well as the several off-leash subcommittees, which have been posted. I believe they're recorded.
If it's not too much, I would request if you could kind of make a list of the ones that are most, relevant, that you think would be most ideal for us to watch, to be caught up on. Would that be difficult?
I can put together so the Parks and Recreation Commission, I'm not quite sure how they proceed with their meetings. They did draft a whole memo that went out to City Council that outlined their procedures leading up to the task force. I'll outline the days that the task force did meet so that you can go into the calendar and look at those.
Okay.
Was the study session on Monday, do you think that provides the overview that most should watch?
So if you can go and look at the videos, it does give various perspectives. And at some points it does become very argumentative. I'll be very honest with you, because it is passionate from a few members of the community where some work was not done. The meeting on Monday with City Council was the most comprehensive, up-to-date information that was gathered from a variety of sources to be presented. And this was not presented by city staff. This was presented by a mediator who put all of this together. So it was a third-party person who looked at everyone's interests and put together the most accurate and cumulative concession plan that we could come up with. And it highlighted some of the concerns and the pros and cons.
Is that like written up in a document as well? Is that part of like
It is,
the,
there's actually a PowerPoint presentation attached to that.
okay,
Shows the entire presentation along with the presentation of the video, as well as some information that was provided by the mediation company to include what the next steps are with the outlined surveys.
okay, so that would be in the packet from Monday?
Yes, and
Okay,
it is the most comprehensive, pulled together highlight reel of everything that has taken place.
thank you. And then on the changes to the parks, does that mean that the only off-leash areas as proposed or currently planned would be fenced?
So there's a variety of those that have been proposed. And again, these are proposed changes. They have not been authorized by council. That there are a few variables. The thing that the committee was looking at is the amenities that are in place, sheltering, as well as a playground. And that determined whether it was fenced, partially fenced, or completely fenced. So not all of them are completely fenced, but that PowerPoint specifically highlights the parks and the proposed plans, and to include drawings of every park.
This I'm sure I'll find out when I go through all that, but my one last question was, has it been considered to include allowing like demonstrable voice control like they have in Boulder?
So we had a brief conversation about that, and that is not logistically possible within the city of Inglewood. We just do not have the resources to consider that or provide those tests. That is something that we could consider and would be considered as part of the licensing program, should Parks and Rec as well as this body move forward with those types of recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Lewis.
Oh, I got promoted.
Thank you, Carson. Those were a
Thanks.
lot of good questions.
Councilmember Russell, you had your hand up.
Well, and I can actually address this even during my report time. I do believe, and I can look this up, Parks and Rec did a presentation. I want to say it was back in March 2020. That was a pretty comprehensive view. That was the beginning, I believe, of it coming back to council at this point in time. I do believe Supervisor Lewis is correct that it's been going on for quite a while, but I mean, all of a sudden, I know that it came to a head just after the March, whatever the meeting date was in March of 2020. So I think that's when things started to heat up. But I think, Officer Lewis, if you have that one also, that would give everybody an overall idea. I think the meeting on Monday night was a great overview of the suggestions that we're going to deal with now, but we're not in the final steps yet because I think that survey has to come back and the task force is still going to meet a few more times. Is that correct?
What are you doing?
Supervisor Lewis?
So yes, the task force will meet once the survey results are done, just to finalize and have additional conversations before I believe this is presented finally to council with recommendations, and it probably will go to a study session. My understanding is it would go to a study session and council would ask potentially for some next steps or changes in the proposed recommendations before moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry,
will
I
put
got your
together-
title wrong.
Oh, no, give me a promotion. That's fine. Just to, I'll put something together that has the dates. I know if you are familiar with the program and the way the calendar is looking, you can look under the boards and commissions, and under Parks and Recreation, it lists all the meeting dates. You can click on some of those. I'm happy to also present a few dates for you.
Member Dickerson, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One on the snow. Generally on my street, if there's sun, it melts the snow, but it didn't happen this week. Fortunately, one of my neighbors took care of my problem, but there's a house for sale in my neighborhood and nobody's living there. And they haven't made any effort to clean the sidewalk. And
So I know that I was in your neighborhood personally, and I did issue notices within your neighborhood. So I can say without a doubt that the neighbors within your community did receive snow notices specifically from me on Monday.
Okay, but nobody lives there and they haven't been coming by. So if a house is for sale and it's essentially empty, how would you get the notice to them?
So we do try to mail notices if it's different from the actual property owner. And this, in most sale circumstances, that's not possible because the person who's selling the house typically is also the owner of the house of deed at the property. So it's one of those things that's very difficult to enforce a specific property that's for sale. We also do reach out if we do see for sale signs, reach out to the agents to let them know the concern.
Okay, my second question, well, actually, it's more of a comment. Our committee has the specific obligation and responsibility to review codes and make recommendations. And one of them is on Title VII, Chapter 1, which is animal control and animal welfare. I understand that there is a code in Title 11 for off-leash dogs. It's very strict, but it applies only to parks. There is no real off-leash code otherwise in Title VII, except that it says that at large means off-leash, and it applies to dogs and cats only. So what is going on with this task force, and why has it not been brought to our committee to make recommendations
May I
on
address
revision to
that?
code?
May I address that?
Yeah.
So, Colleen, we were aware of this. Councilmember Russell brought it to our attention. I want to say it was like maybe June, July, August, that this task force had been formed. And as a result, at our meeting, we assigned member Monica. We assigned Monica to participate on that task force, and that's the purpose of her being on that task force, was to be a part of that conversation, and she's been going to those meetings. Colleen?
I understand she's been going to those meetings, but nothing, it's still our responsibility to make recommendations for changes to code. It doesn't sound like there are going to be any changes to code. And if there are, it needs to come to us first.
That's Monica's role, is for her to help that task force understand our code as the way it is today. And if there's any changes, then to recommend that. I just think that's why I asked Dave to clarify what impact the recommendation has on code enforcement. Supervisor Lewis?
So sitting through all of the meetings, there has been no proposed changes to the code.
Other than the conversation.
Other than the recommendation. So it's basically policy of how the parks are being used, which I don't believe would be in the purview of this body. That's the direction of Parks and Rec, and they would make those recommendations to council. The only recommendation that is coming from that, and it's a cross-section conversation, is because Monica is a part of that organization, as well as they made the recommendations themselves of licensing to utilize some of our off-leash facilities, like some of our surrounding communities like Boulder. Carson pointed that out. Boulder does require a specific license to utilize some of their off-leash parks. So that was where that part was taking place. But that is only a proposal, and it's not something that would be brought forward. I'm saying there is no current changes currently to any of our municipal code, just how parks are being used, which would impact code enforcement and how we're doing our jobs.
Councilmember Russell, you had your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. And so Supervisor Lewis, maybe you can answer this question for me because things are really blurred. How did the special task force come into being originally? It was not appointed by council, was it?
I cannot answer that without certainty because I was appointed to the task force. I don't know how, or I was voted in. I think the Parks and Recreation Committee, my understanding is the Park and Recreation Committee has the authority to make subcommittees, just like this committee would. And so they had for multiple years, I think a 2-year running off-leash task force that was evaluating the program and what was happening in our parks, which led to the March recommendation. And then that's when the Park and Recreation Committee voted to expand the committee to include community members, as well as stakeholders and other board members to include Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, which was when Monica Johnson was voted in from this committee to move to that one, which made sense because she's also on the Parks and Rec Committee.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to do some research too, but thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. And that's just in a nutshell. I don't have the dates and the times, and I think that might be something you're looking for. I think you asked for that once before, and I don't know if it was a formal council request.
Member Dickerson, did you have further questions?
Oh, I just had the two.
Okay. Any other
And thank you for answering them.
Any
You're
other
so
questions?
welcome. And Member Dickerson, I do just want to thank you for your input. From my standpoint, it's always important that we're transparent and we can present. If there's new code, I want you all to be able to evaluate that. And also take into my consideration of the Code Enforcement Division and how that impacts us, which is why I'm bringing this off-leash subcommittee forward to you all again. I think it's very important because it does impact the way code enforcement does their job, that you evaluate it and you maybe make a recommendation as well to council.
Okay. Further questions for Supervisor Lewis? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move forward to an update from City Council Liaison Member Russell. Maureen, did you
I
have?
just wanted to let y'all know that I just emailed you that PowerPoint.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
So, we did speak about the off-leash. It was mostly just a report to City Council. And I really do want you all to weigh in on this. I mean, I want you to look at all of those reports because you absolutely are an advisory committee to the City Council. I'm a little concerned that I don't think the task force is an advisory committee to City Council, but the Parks and Rec Commission is also. So anyway, I would like for you all to look at that and weigh in. I think part of the reason, and I was not the first council member that coined this, Council Member Cuesta said he felt like everyone would be equally unhappy with the decision. And I absolutely agree. But I see that there are some good things, but I want you all to look at it and weigh in to see what you think. So other than that, well, and I don't know, the city attorney also gave public notice on Monday that I believe January 4th will be her last day. So council will be looking for a new city attorney. And other than that, I feel like life has been a blur. Everything has been really not so busy because we're on Zoom, but it's been busy in different ways. I'm ready to get back to City Hall because I feel like we are disconnected in the Zoom meetings from citizens. And citizens do call in, but we just need to get back to City Hall. So that is my opinion. But it is the way it is for right now. So, and I do appreciate all your work and all you're doing. And I appreciate Supervisor Lewis and the work that code enforcement has been doing as well. So thank you very much. I mean, if you have questions for me, I may have other things to say, but I just don't remember them.
Councilmember Russell, we sent the letter proposing the change to the animal ordinance forward a month ago, and we were curious as to where or what the next steps were on that.
Now, was I supposed to take that to City Council? Is that what we decided, and then it would go to the city attorney? Or was it going to the city attorney first?
No, it needs to go to City Council first, but I think Supervisor Lewis discovered that it needed to go to the city manager, who would then put it on the agenda for City Council.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
No, sorry. I sent it to the city manager, and he sent me back an email telling me I was supposed to send it to Councilmember Russell for her to present to City Council. So
And
that's what I did.
And when did you send it to me? You know, I'm not getting emails from you for some reason. And it was looking in the junk email.
I'll have to go back and look, but I should be able to let you know before this meeting is over.
Okay, that'll be great. And I apologize. I mean, there has been a lot going on in the last 3 weeks. My uncle passed away about 3 weeks ago, and I've been out of town some. So I think that's why I feel discombobulated. But thank you, Maureen. I appreciate that. So that has not been taken care of, but I will take care of it. When I get it, I'll forward to who I need to forward it to. City Council does not have any more meetings now until January 4th.
Okay. Further questions for Councilmember Russell?
Sorry to hear about your uncle.
And thank you.
Maureen?
Yeah, I sent it over on November 18th, and I just forwarded it again to you, Councilmember Russell.
Thank you very much, Maureen.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no further questions for Councilmember Russell, we'll go to the next agenda item, which is the Communications Subcommittee. Cara, will you speak on behalf of the Communications Subcommittee?
Oh, sure. So as Dave Lewis mentioned earlier, and I think you guys have all received the email from Julie, we did get a full page in the magazine. So yay. And thank you for everyone's contributions on that. I know we did not get a draft back prior to basically publication for the magazine. So we'll work on that going forward. But I think it turned out great. Hope you all agree. So I think, you know, with that article, we're just, you know, as Dave mentioned, we're just trying to, you know, engage the public with sort of voluntary, you know, just voluntary following of code enforcement, and just educating them that they're here to help. And yeah, I think we really achieved that with the article. So that's exciting to see. Pushing forward on the EAB, I think Monica got confirmation today that they want to set up a meeting for January 4th to start discussing that. And Julie, I think the plan is to use your previous article that did not get published as a starting point. So we'll do that. And then I think the target was April to start like a marketing campaign with that. So they'll be setting a meeting up early January to discuss. So, Colleen?
Yeah, I actually never got any notice on any of this, but that's neither here nor there at this point. I did ask in the last meeting and via email to check on putting an insert, preferably Julie's article, in the next publication. because we can't wait. And I was told that it would be too expensive to do a survey. But I'd like to point out this. I got 2 of these on wayfinding and placemaking survey. And if they can do it for that, which is certainly not critical, they certainly can do a survey or a notice to the entire city, every single family or lot with residential.
Sure,
Uh,
I agree.
So I would like to see, that they've cut out all of the recreation stuff, so there's plenty of room in the magazine. They can add either a whole page using Julie's to this. It's already been approved and vetted and everything,
Sure.
and or an insert with something like this, so that people can send back information.
Okay.
And I think it needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no,
You
I
can't wait until March. It's got to go now.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I will bring that up to Monica to follow up on that and push harder. Dave, sorry.
I just want to point out that the surveys that Member Dickerson is speaking about, these are done through a professional company and come at a considerable cost, because we do have to use specific data points and specific data locations. And those specific surveys were budgeted for by City Council to do these projects. I apologize. I don't want to cut you off. I just want you guys to have all the information so that you know that that this was actually a quite expensive survey process that is being done, and council's aware of those costs.
So even if we don't do a survey, can they not just include a flyer with the article? Is that?
I would make those recommendations. I would be cautious about doing surveys only because, and I think Carson is probably the best person maybe to speak on this, the statistical material that comes back may not be accurate. And this is part of the problem or challenges, and Councilmember Russell can talk about this, the challenges that we're having with, which is why we're gone to a new company, the validity of certain statistical surveys that have been presented. So providing information is great, but I just want to caution this committee, the amount of money that it may take, and it may need to go to council for that type of an approval.
Sure, yeah, surveys are always very hard. Colleen, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about doing a survey. I was simply saying that it could be, the insert could have this postage thing on it. So for people who wanted to return information on Emerald Ash Borer, I have this tree. It is X amount in diameter. I need help to get rid of it, or I need help to whatever, the self-survey from an individual. We're not talking about a survey like this. We're just talking about a response from citizens from something in the magazine that can be torn out and sent back to those people that don't have the ability to do it online. See that? This was an expense that I personally think is unnecessary. I'm just pointing out that franking thing is, that's what was expensive. Because it cost them to send this out. To have this in the magazine, something that can be torn out and mailed back in, will not be that expensive. Because most people don't, I'm sorry to say this, but I believe very few people read the magazine. But it's one way of getting the information to them, and then asking if they, have an ash tree, if they want to self-report it, and it will only be a cost to the city if it gets sent back in by mail. But trying to do something through email or online is a problem, because right now we've only got 2,000 citizens that are signed up with the city, and very few, we just don't have a lot of people that have email or online presence. But they might be, you know, they do get the magazine. So if they had something in there and they happen to read it and we had something for them to send back in, yes, I have an ash tree. Supposedly there are 22,000 ash trees in the city on private property.
Yes, I 100% hear your point. I will bring that up with Monica to follow up with the other city officials to see what we can do about that. So,
Councilmember Russell, you had your hand up?
I was just going to make a suggestion, and I don't know that they can do this, but Kara, this is maybe something that, you know, I used to get I think, I don't remember if it was Organic Gardening or Prevention Magazine. There were always these little like postcards stuck in the magazine. They weren't actually in the magazine. They were just kind of stuffed in there. So
I just fall out every time you open it.
well, because they were advertisements for
Yeah.
things. But I mean, just a suggestion if that's a possibility, because then it wouldn't be involved in putting something extra in.
Yeah, no, both great suggestions, and absolutely, Colleen, if they can send something out like that, there's, you know, really no reason why it can't be done for EAB. So I will bring that up with Monica and, you know, have her press harder on the city officials to see what we can do to, you know, to get something included. So, and that's a perfect example. So thank you for sharing those flyers that you got.
I do know that Chris and Monica agreed that Monica would meet with the communications staff. And, you know, one of the topics is coming up with a communications plan for EAB overall. That is not only includes, you know, print articles, but there's a social media component to it. And I don't think that meeting has occurred yet. I think it's in the works. So
I think that's what we were planning for January 4th, I think was like a kickoff for that.
Right. So I think there's lots of ideas like that that Colleen suggested, and I know you and Monica have had some others. Maureen?
I just, as a side note, I received the Inglewood magazine in the mail at home. I live in Denver. So I think the only reason that it's received by us is because my husband has gone to the gym and signed up for that because I'm an employee of Inglewood. So that could be a cause of concern. I mean, you might be sending out magazines to people that don't even live in Inglewood. So anyway, just a side note.
Interesting.
Okay, further questions for Cara on communications? Thank you so much, Cara. Do you need anything from us for the next, I guess we just wait to hear back from you guys after you had the meeting with Chris Harguth?
I mean, just if anyone has ideas, suggestions for, you know, for communication or social media, please feel free to share those with the communication subcommittee. We're open to, you know, all ideas and suggestions, and yeah, appreciate everyone's participation. So.
Great, thank you.
So one thing, I might have missed it, but did you send this out as like draft for us to comment on before it got submitted? Because I don't see it in email.
No, so that's the one problem that we encountered. We did not receive a draft before it went to the printer. So I'll make sure Monica raises that, like going forward, that we do receive drafts before they're actually submitted to the printer. We did not get one this time. It was just, here's what it looks like, it's done. So unfortunately, we weren't able to send anything else around for comment. But we'll work on that going forward, because we do realize everybody, you know, deserves input there. So.
Did you and Monica write it, or did the city write it?
No, it came from, there were 3 different versions that were sent over to the city. I believe Monica and I worked on 2, and Colleen had also participated and helped out with a couple of them as well. So all 3 versions were sent over to the city, and they basically took all 3 of those and combined them into the final product, which is what you see.
I mean, would it be unreasonable for whenever you guys are sending something to the city to send it to us too, in case we have thoughts that we could throw out there?
Yeah, absolutely. We can certainly.
So
do
I mean, I guess the way to do that would be to send it to Chair Bowden, and if Chair Bowden could distribute it to the rest of us, right? Is that okay, Chair Bowden?
Yes, it is. That's what we did before, is we would draft it and then send it out to not only the committee, but also to code enforcement to have everybody review that. And then we sent the reviewed draft to the city. We were never given an opportunity to review the article before it went to press. So pretty much whatever we sent to the city was what the committee got to see
Okay.
and comment on.
I think we were expecting to get a draft back to share with you all rather than share 3 versions of something with a large group of people. Can be very difficult to sort of aggregate comments on. So we were hoping for that proof before it went to the printer, and good to know there. So we'll fix that going forward.
And what changed was we were writing the article. So it was pretty much in our world pretty final when we sent it to the city, and they rarely changed it, only just to make something shorter. But this time the city actually wrote the article, so there was no final form to share with the committee and get input on. So Supervisor Lewis?
I apologize. I just want to make everyone aware that the city did not write this particular article. Monica and I actually had conversations, and she wrote up the majority of the article. I didn't realize it was going to turn out the way it did. I didn't know that they were going to turn it into the Dave Supervisor show. But I think it's a face to what we're doing, and I think it really explained it. But Monica was the one that came up with those questions and asked those of me.
Yeah, this one was very much done in a Q&A style. So the questions and answers were final, basically Monica asking Dave and his responses, but there's more substantive stuff on the page other than just the questions. And that's the stuff that the city ultimately finalized without our input. So
And I think it came out great, but just in the future, I would like to be able to potentially throw in my 2 cents before it goes to the city.
Yep, of course.
Colleen, you had your hand up?
Most of my comments, questions have been answered.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Cara. Appreciate it. We're moving on to agenda item number 7, is new business. Is there any motions for new business? Because we don't have an item underneath there. Colleen?
We might want to consider, given everything that's happened with the task force, actually doing a comprehensive review of Title VII, Chapter 1, A through C.
Was that on our prioritized list of things that we wanted to address? I don't recall.
Well, we've come up with one little thing about the impound.
Right.
But that didn't include the fact that there's a big disconnect and a change in the format of Title VII from when we first discussed it as a committee in March of 2017. Right. And we know there's a lot of problems having a code that's specifically dogs and cats, and then having another code on the same subject that is somewhat contradictory.
Right.
But our point on the impound was a stopgap measure for a perceived problem. But there are a lot of problems with the code. It's very disconnected.
I don't have a problem with that. I just, I think it's really important that we keep our eyes focused on our priorities. And I think priorities are only valid the day we set them, and they need to be revisited as time moves forward and things happen and things going on in the city change. So if we are to add that to our list of projects that we want to address, I would like to request that we prioritize it with what we had previously determined should be our priorities. And maybe that is something that we can put on the agenda for our next meeting, if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Because I think if we clean up or revise or recommend any revision to Title VII, Chapter 1, it will take care of a couple of the other problems, including the impound.
All right, and when we have our next meeting, this document I just pulled from many of our meetings. I'll send that out for our next meeting so you can see where we stand, and we achieved 2 and we're working on the 3rd. So that's the purpose of having this list, is that we look at what needs to be done and we decide where we spend our energy next. And if we need to revise that, we revise it. Okay?
Yep.
Alrighty, I'll stop that. Thank you. Carson?
I apologize. I haven't been able to keep up with all the city council meetings, but do we have any response from our letter?
On animal?
Yeah.
Not yet. Councilmember Russell will be taking it to City Council in January at their next meeting, or bringing up, I guess. And I think City Council faces the same thing we do, which is what are the priorities?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. So moving forward to item number 8, which is unfinished business, which is EAB. I kind of reviewed everything with the committee at our last meeting, really wanting to present to you what had been done up to this point and the information that we had collected in the analysis that we had done. And I thought it would be a good time at this point is to allow everybody to have questions or comments based on their review and what they saw. Does anyone have any questions about, number 1, about EAB itself? Number 2, the research that we did with the other cities, or our code itself? I think it's pretty, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say my one question that I haven't found total answer to is, has there been sighting of it south of like Westminster yet?
It's in Broomfield.
Okay.
It's on the state forestry site.
Okay.
They announced it.
So the expectation is it'll be here, within a year or so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I went back through it because it had been so long. It's been basically a year since we did all the analysis. And it's pretty complicated. I don't know if you all felt that way after reviewing. Our tree code is fairly narrow in the sense that it's all in one place, both with residential and also with building code. But when you start looking what other cities have done, they've crafted their code in a way to support to support the city stepping in should anything happen to a resident and their ability to care for the ash tree. And I think that's what really jumped out to us when we did our research. And I know that there's a lot of things that we need to do with our tree code because it is out of date. But I think if we could take a step back and focus just on the EAB issue and not on all the other changes that need to occur, because our proposal to City Council is going to be what changes we need to make to code moving forward so that the city can help residents address the ash tree or the infestation, and also protect residents from each other if they don't take care of their ash trees. So I guess I'm asking for an opinion in terms of how we proceed from here. Colleen?
Yeah, we kind of got into that in the last formation of the committee, and in our discussion, Al and I were the ones that were supposed to come up with recommendations on this, and I came up with a whole bunch of them and presented them, and most everybody agreed with them at that time. The code itself should have, the reason why it's kind of messed up and so limited is because we used to have a city forestry department, and it was a fairly good one, and it worked well. Commander Englert even pointed out how it worked before and how well it worked. But they eliminated that some time ago, and by eliminating it, they kind of just left everything up in the air. There are a lot of codes that are, it's just a lot of missing areas and a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. But at any rate, the bulk of it is in 11-5-8. And there was a typo in that because it says 1 inch diameter as mature. It was prohibited and had to be removed unless it was more than 1 inch in diameter, a mature tree, but there is no such thing as a mature tree. And that was the presenting problem. And we were addressing that back in 2017 and 2018. And the last committee meeting where we presented these, we wanted to bring it into alignment with Title 16, and it was missing one of those items. And in the discussion, and I believe, and I remember that Dave Lewis was there in our discussion, and he pointed out, well, maybe we should add a couple of other trees. And one of them he mentioned was the tree of heaven. So I added that subsequent to this, but there were 7 points. Well, actually 10, I think, yeah. 10 points, revisions. And one of them, well, several of them involved making this not under the general penalty because that made it very difficult to get anything done. And with the, when we did the snow and ice, which by the way is the only revision to code that this committee has ever gotten before council and gotten done.
And not ever. When was the, is that an echo from me?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Not ever. Code has been amended before, right?
But not by our committee.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so anyway, I pointed out that 11-5-3 and 4 were eliminated, and that had to do with the city arborist language and authority removed. So the code is still open, because it said reserved. And one of the things that the committee, before this new committee was formed, when Al was still here, we wanted to consider an employee arborist position for at least the next 5 years. Redo, add to the city, add back in a city arborist or contract with an Inglewood-based arborist to help with this EAB problem. And consider a low-cost inoculation program to preserve as many as possible ash trees and provide an incentive to property owners with ash trees to attempt to preserve their trees. And Dave Lee made the point that there's a size limitation on ash trees. It's not really cost effective or particularly good to try to save a huge diameter tree. He said between 10 and 20 inches, I believe was what he said. That was if the tree was already healthy, between 10 and 20 inches in diameter, that was the optimum size for inoculation that may work. Younger trees, he's thought that they should be taken down probably. But at any rate, that was the last one. If we made a recommendation for at least the next 5 years, a city arborist to work specifically on EAB and develop programs for citizens to incentivize them to take care of these trees and get rid of other dead and dying trees like Siberian elms that are really ruining the city. But first we have to fix that typo, because a 1-inch diameter tree is not a mature tree.
Sonia, I'm laughing at Sonia's dog.
Oh, I didn't think I was being funny. I might not be very articulate. I think I was being funny. My dog finally went to sleep. I was going to call personal privilege to take care.
Well, and so you can see there are many arms and legs to this issue. Some of the things that can be done have to do with code specifically in terms of enabling the city to assist homeowners with their tree problems. Then there's other options where city programs can be put in place that are at a cost to the city that are outside of code. So it's pretty complicated. One of the things that I think that worked well before is that 2 of the members went off and did a deep dive into this issue and came back with a recommendation, and that's pretty well where it left. And that was Colleen and a prior member, Al. So I was thinking about looking at different scenarios. For example, we know that homeowners that don't have an ash tree in their yard are not an issue. Then we have homeowners that have ash trees that aren't sick and they're large enough to try and save. And then within that, you have homeowners that can't afford it or need help. And then you have homeowners that have no intention of even, you have all kinds of scenarios. So I was thinking about doing a list of those scenarios and understanding how our code supports that scenario or doesn't. And it's basically an as-is situation. This is where we are today. And that gets us out of the weeds of the code and gets us more into the situation that we're dealing with. And then based on that assessment, then we make recommendations. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it does. It makes some, sense to me, but that's why we did this as just suggestions for revisions. And because the code right now just says these trees are prohibited and they have to come down unless they're 1 inch. So that's a non-issue. I mean, we know that has to be revised. And then there are a couple of other provisions that don't make a lot of sense or actually belong elsewhere. But then we could consider emerald ash borer as a separate issue that could be handled by resolution or go into a program. But the code, we do have a problem with dead and dying trees in the city. And they need to be immediately addressed and people incentivized to plant, to remove and replace them. Citizens are going to need help with that because some of these trees, Siberian elms and female cottonwoods, are at the end of their life cycle. And but if we lose all the ash trees, we are doomed because we are going to lose 80% of our tree canopy. So we have to address two issues: diseased and dying trees, the possibility of 22,000 estimated ash trees that are going to be affected, and the problems we already have. So if we make a code or make recommendations to a code that take that into account, but separate programs, like you're saying, that may or may not be part of code. But I don't see any reason why we can't incentivize in code help to the citizens.
And we saw some of that with surrounding cities that did incorporate programs like that into their code to help residents address, diseased and dying trees and preventing the spread. And there was also a disposal component to that. If I could make a proposal with this team, is that possible, Colleen and somebody else, I'm willing to raise my hand to, meet outside and put together a scenario of all the different things that could happen moving forward and how we're poised to address that. And then based on that, we can come up with recommendations. I think we're going to have to do that anyway for City Council to understand the complexity of our code and why a review and a revision is needed.
It is one of the documents that you posted, the version that Member Dickerson and
The city attorney.
and Al that had put together with all the red lines.
Yes.
Which one is that?
So there are there's tree shrub code that has all the comments from Al, Colleen, and the city attorney. And then there's tree shrub code without, what does that say? Without prior edits. So one, I just removed, one is clean and doesn't have any changes to it. It's the way the code exists today. And the other one has the comments and the suggestions from the prior team that worked on this. And then I would also like to point out that the research that we did also contained insights and recommendations. So it's kind of a dual thing. And that's why I'm thinking, I had to go back through all this myself. It's been a year and bring myself up to speed on it. But I keep thinking about this scenario situation where we look at what could happen and how our current code system is set up to support it. And then based on that, have a recommendation for what needs to change. But I don't see us doing it in a committee setting. There's too much deep technical stuff and details that need to get into. Colleen?
Yeah, what isn't on there is what you said you were going to put in, which was the suggestions to revise 11-5-8. I can cut that part out of the presentation I put together that we tried to put before council before, when we were just dealing with that portion of the code, because the rest of it was just punitive stuff and, charging people if the city took action, but the city isn't taking action. They're calling it all civil matter. So the suggestions, it's 2 pages, and it was presented to in a committee meeting, and when Al was still here. And my point was that it was too difficult for council or even new committee members to figure out when you put it into what the city attorney had done. It was in comments mostly and not in the body. So it was hard to tell what was code and what was being suggested. And you were going to put this list of suggestions on there.
Which I'm doing right now. I just had not done it yet.
I'm still
fine.
struggling with identifying what's what, because the one that says tree shrub code without prior edits has a bunch of comments and edits in it.
It shouldn't.
I'm looking at it right now. It doesn't have any comments on what I'm looking at.
I just
Oh.
re-downloaded it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I see a couple that were left in. That's my fault.
Well, I see a lot of comments and then also like red line edits. So
That's on the one that has the.
it's
That's
the
where
one that
all the-
says without prior edits. I mean, I could hide the comments or I could change it so that the markup is not showing.
So let me share my screen. I want to make sure we're seeing the same thing.
I just downloaded out of that Google Drive folder.
Okay. So there's 5 documents. There's this one that says tree shrub code that has all the edits from previously. And you can see
Yeah, that's the one that's so difficult. I couldn't even figure out.
I mean, I'm opening them in real Word, which is gonna show
Yeah.
everything.
so you can see here's all the changes. Sorry, it took it a minute to recognize it. So that's why so that's the one that's just tree shrub code. That was this one. So this one is supposed to be without prior comments. And if there are comments in there, that was mistakenly left.
So when I open that with regular Word,
Oh,
it under like
Oh,
11.5.5,
something
there's a
happened.
whole bunch of
yeah,
red lines and.
I didn't do my job. I thought.
Yeah,
So when
it's
I went
the
through these
easiest.
before, I couldn't tell what I didn't, and none of them looked like the version that I saw from Colleen and Al when we were still working on this. I mean, I was familiar with the research because I participated in that.
Right. So what we're missing is the document without comments. So I
Just the
didn't.
code. Can't
Yeah,
we just
just the
put the
code.
code up and
Yeah. So as you can see, it's complicated. So what do you all think about having a couple of people work offline to come back to the committee with a document that we can see how our code currently is designed to support this incoming infestation or not?
I think that's fine.
Okay. Colleen?
yeah, Carson is real familiar with this kind of thing, and I've been working on this for 3 years. So I'd be more than willing to work with Carson. But I do think it would be important for them to see just the suggestions to revise 11-5-8.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a tendency to want to fix everything all at once. But I'd like to focus us on the EAB issue and anything that would impact it versus a complete rewrite of all the code.
Well, it's not a complete rewrite of the whole code. It's just pointing out where the code is not serving the original problem before we knew about EAB of prohibited trees. It's not aligned with what's in Title 16. And there's also no method of enforcement, which if we made the necessary changes in the code, it would include EAB. But I want special emphasis on EAB because that's a disease. It could cost us our entire tree canopy because there's so many of them. But we've always had the problem of these prohibited trees and dead and dying trees that haven't been taken care of. So in order to accommodate it for EAB, it will also accommodate it for the other problems that are contributing to this problem.
Cara?
Well, I just have a question and a clarification, I guess. Like, our job is not to write code, but to make recommendations on code, right?
That's correct.
So wouldn't we, I guess, gather our thoughts on what we believe should be included in the code, and that would go off to council and the city attorney, similar to the letter that we did, right?
Right. And that's what I'm suggesting is that a subgroup of this committee works offline and comes back with that recommendation.
Just to clarify, my response was to Chair Bowden saying that, yes, I think that's great for the subcommittee to do that, and I support that. I wasn't necessarily volunteering for subcommittee.
Would you volunteer for it, please?
Well,
If you
especially
worked
because
on
Chair Bowden already said she'd raise her hand, and she knows this stuff better than me.
it, but you know code. You've dealt with code a lot.
I will do it if I must. I feel a bit overwhelmed with city stuff personally right now because I'm dealing with all this trash committee stuff too, which is temporary, at least for the next.
Colleen, I'm happy to work with you on it, and then we can pull in Carson as needed. How about that?
That's fine with me. And I'll definitely I want to participate on, as like second round for sure on, I'll go into all the detail again because I did originally and will continue to participate, but I'd rather not be first round on this if possible.
That's fine with me. We can just email you for comments or whatever, and on the final version. But I thought we had kind of done that with suggestions to revise, but it probably should be tightened up and
I think it needs to
maybe
be
added
in a format that, I know you've got it up here.
Well, I've also got it in writing.
But how it all fits together and how it would work is where I'm trying to do the big picture.
So that's what I did originally before EAB came in. This is what the code could look like, and make notes under each section of the code that I thought was a problem or was missing. So I don't think we won't be writing code. We're making suggestions based upon the code. So here's the code. Here's our suggestions. But we can work that out.
I was going to say, since we went over all this, we have to inform the other committee members. Plus, we're going to have, I guess, 2 new committee members in January.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we get through all this, I'm sure we're going to want to take into account their input. So having this in a consumable form is certainly going to help.
What I'm thinking is the proposal that the off-leash task force presented to city council was very clear, and you could see how it all fit together. And I guess that's what got me thinking about the scenario thing is the what if this happens, here's how the city is currently set up to support it. And that's where you see the gaps. And then based on that, here's what we recommend the city do. It's as simple as that. And like I said, it's the bigger picture. But if Colleen and I, and then working with Carson, can come back to the committee with the start of that kind of shows how we would evaluate it. Did anyone have, and when I say anyone, it's basically Kara and Sonia, because you guys weren't on the committee when we originally did this. When you read what the other cities had done to prepare for EAB, was there any insight or anything that jumped out to you? That's what I mean is you really have to, we all took the time, a year ago to go and do the research ourselves, and that's where we learned, but we've got to get everybody else up to speed and basically show how the code is working now and what would happen with an EAB infestation. So is everyone okay with this subgroup coming back to this committee with an overview that can be, is pretty tight in terms of current code and current programs, and then a proposal of what we might consider for changes.
I'm
Yeah.
biased, but I'm for it.
And I would recommend to the other members, it might be worth listening to our meeting from last year when what is it, Dave Lee, who
Yes.
presented to us. He gave us a whole presentation on EAB originally that like was the beginning of this. And we asked a lot of questions and he filled us in on a ton. And then we went off and did a bunch of research, but I think it'd probably be helpful to listen to that recording.
And maybe the discussion we had on proposed revisions.
Sure. Okay. All right. So if I'm seeing no objections, then the three of us will, in some form or fashion, go away and do some research and collaborate and come up with a more focused document. Is that okay? All right.
Fine with me.
And I believe those were our next steps. So unless there's anything else we want to talk about unfinished business, I see anything? Nope. Then item 9 on our agenda is topics for future meetings. I think we already agreed that we'll have a conversation on the off-leash recommendation, right? And then the three of us can come back to the committee with an overview of EAB and what we're seeing with code and what we recommend. Anything else and then also I would like to look at our priorities again in light of 2021. Any other
Need
topics?
to make a motion or just affirm your agenda setting?
We'll just go ahead, Maureen.
No motions necessary.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other things that we think we need to address at our next meeting in January? Certainly we'll be welcoming the new members. At some point will get an email telling us who our new members are, and then I reach out to them and try to bring them up to date and point them to some resources that they can go to bring themselves up to speed. So I'll put new members. Councilmember Russell?
I actually believe we will be approving the members in January, and they'll probably start
Got it.
in February.
Got it.
I don't think,
Sure, yeah.
I don't know whether they'll be approved in time for our January meeting.
Okay. Maureen?
Yeah, I think all of their terms start in February.
Got it. Okay. And then Councilmember Russell, do you think we'll have any action on the proposed change to the animal code?
Not January 4th.
I'm
Probably not. We'll just,
I don't know. Well, basically, if it's just moving it forward or sending it to the city attorney's office, we will, we probably will discuss that. I'll make sure I get it to the mayor and the mayor pro tem before the January meeting, so it can definitely be on the agenda.
okay.
But when it's on the agenda, it takes a little while.
Do they have a replacement for the city attorney, or is there an interim?
No, there will be an interim. City council hasn't talked about that yet. So there will be an interim city attorney, and then we'll be doing, I think there was consensus last Monday night to hire a search firm to do the search for a city attorney.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear
So
that.
that could,
Uh-oh. I think we lost.
to a year, but there will be an interim.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Any other topics for our next meeting? All right. Next meeting timeline or date wise.
Reorganizing.
Would be the 20th of January. Inauguration day.
Is it January 20th? Is that what you said, Julie?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Colleen?
Yeah, do you want to set some times for us to meet, but after January 1st, or can we just offline talk about some things?
Yeah.
Okay,
I found out that I will not be with my family for the holidays because San Francisco has shut down. So I will be here. It's just going to be bizarre. So I will be very available unless I start a new job. So, but yes, why don't you and I connect offline, and then we can bring Carson in. You and I probably have a couple of hours worth of work to do, and I'll start putting together some thoughts so we can get started. So,
okay.
all right.
I'll be
Unless-
around too.
Okay, you okay? Well, I hope everyone has a lovely holiday, despite the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and that it's healthy and safe for you and yours. Thank you for all the hard work that you did in 2020. It's been a rough year, but I'm really proud of this committee and what we've accomplished so far. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.